I talk a lot about bluegrass music and the relative nature of what it was. Anybody out there think Flatt and Scruggs is a bluegrass band?
Yeah.
How about Reno and Smiley, or the Stanley Brothers?
Yeah.
Well, how come they never billed themselves as such? They always called themselves country music. That was because there was this domain back in those days called bluegrass. Back in those days, a music form, a rhythm defined it. It didn't matter whether it was Bob Marley's music and you or what it was, or whether it was the bossa nova that plays under the Girl from Ipanema, or whatever it was. A rhythm form would define the musical form itself. And Monroe was about the rhythm playingest character I ever played with in my life, and his rhythm played at a pace that none of the other acoustic string band music, especially the 40s and 50s and 60s, had. It was more like the choppy tempos and arrangements of the Chicago jazz bands during the late 20s and early 30s when he was in that part of the country. But I started talking about some of this stuff around. Actually, I did about a 5 or 6 hour video for Radford University last year of talking the origin and development of bluegrass music as a pure creative art form. And I differentiate it from what we're hearing out here in this day and time, because in this day and time it tends to be more of a communication skill. It's the way guys in Bean Blossom, Indiana get together out from under a tree, and you got one from California and one from Michigan and one from Florida and one from New York and everything. And it's the way they have fellowship. And it's mostly a communication and a social medium like that at this point. You know, you don't hear the Blue Moons of Kentucky being written anymore, or the instrumentals. Those 50s instrumentals was what I zeroed in on that Joanne picked up on. And I just asked people, have you ever played the third part, the wheelhouse? Because there's a third part on the record that Hubert Davis plays. It goes like... And you got a big G run there. But back in those days, the individual instrumentalists would come up with their own breaks on the tunes. When it developed itself from being the primal form it was in the 40s and 50s, as it gravitated into being a more elevated art form, when melodic banjo came along, when Bill Keith was introduced into the band, all of a sudden the scope of the music just sort of went like this. Because where did you hear that Rudy Lyle break on Rawhide? Where did you hear that Hubert Davis break on Wheelhouse? Where it was, the break itself was unique to the instrument that it was being played on. And I say the scope of the music went like this because all of a sudden the banjo's playing what the fiddle's playing, what the mandolin taught him, and then it allows the mandolin to improvise on the thing beyond that. But most of the banjo players from '63 this way were struggling to play exactly the same thing that the fiddle was on that stuff. So in essence, the music changed a lot back there. But